Good afternoon, everybody. This is episode number 36 of the Sports Consiglieres Podcast, produced by Chop Sports Media. I'm your host, Jim Whalen. Along with me is my co-host, Jerry. How you doing, Jerry, on this Saturday?
Good, Jimmy. What's up?
And along with our next guest played at McKinley Tech in Washington, D.C., played at Georgetown in the heyday 82, 83, 84, 85 seasons. The sixth all-time leading scorer, fourth on rebounding, I think 1,300 points, 700 rebounds. Probably at a time when probably Georgetown was considered one of the best programs ever. It's our pleasure to introduce the Music Man, Billy Morin. Billy, thank you for. Well, listen, we did our research, so I just wanted to. I was listening to a couple of podcasts, Biggie's Rewind. I said I guess you had your boombox. I guess back in the '80s, of the boombox days.
That's right.
So I get to call you the Music Man. So, but growing up in DC, McKinley Tech, I know Gene Smith. I'm surprised you guys never won any sort of championship. I know you spoke highly of your coach Lafayette Moses down in DC. Just talk a little bit about your growing up in DC. That time, I'm sure it was a lot of playground, a lot of who's who, and then McKinley Tech. Was it like you guys have choice schools? Because I guess Gene said you guys were from different neighborhoods in another podcast. So how did you end up at McKinley, and what was it like growing up in DC back in late '70s, early '80s?
Well, I hadn't played organized basketball until I was about 14 years old, and I started in ninth grade, and I started to grow. But I met a gentleman by the name of Lafayette Mosley, who was actually the assistant coach for us at McKinley. The head coach was Walter Kennedy. Walter Kennedy was a globetrotter back in the day. They used to call him Cup. He's about 6'9" or 6'10". And Lafayette lived about half a mile from me. And so he would meet me out on the playground. And he just put me through drills. And it was Lafayette who first took me to my first NBA game. I saw the '79 Washington Bullets against Seattle, and was during the finals. They went to the finals back to back, 78, 79, and was in awe. And Lafayette was the first person to say to me, Bill, if you work hard, you might be able to play in the NBA someday. And so it was really Lafayette that started to instill some kind of confidence in me as a young man. I didn't have a lot of confidence, low self-esteem. I come from a family, single mom, 7 kids. I'm the youngest of 7, and didn't have a lot of opportunities outside of basketball. And so it was really Lafayette Mosley that introduced me to working out. And it's amazing in a year or two how my body developed. He also, at that time, you wanted to get as much exposure as possible so that, the big schools could see you. So he arranged for me to go to 5-star. I don't know if you guys ever heard of 5-star.
Absolutely. That was the place to go.
Yeah. In Garfinkel. And everybody, at 5-star, that's where I first met Patrick. That's where I first met the guys from Villanova, Dwayne, Ed Pigney, Milton Wagner, Billy Thompson. I mean, just a long list of great players and coaches. Bobby Knight, after my junior year, pulled me over and said, Bill, I don't recruit outside of Indiana, but I like your work ethic. Would you consider going to Indiana? It's like, what?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
And
they're coming off of a national champion. They're coming off of Tom. That was the program. So
and it was right after. It was like 81, 82 around that time. I think they won. Was it in 80?
81 I think they won. 80 was Louisville. I think 81 they won with
Okay.
Isaiah.
Yeah, it was right after, and so I was in shock. Anyway, Lafayette introduced me to Coach Kennedy, and not a lot of people came to my neighborhood. He did though. Sat down with us, in our apartment and talked to my mom and talked to me. And so I decided, I would go to McKinley mostly because of, obviously because of Lafayette and because, Walter Kennedy was a guy that I could respect. I mean, he talked about a bunch of the guys that had played before me, that have gone on to play in college and do some terrific things. And so it was a no-brainer. Now, once I got there though, just some amazing, amazing athletes at McKinley. And in DC, uh, with the public schools, if they want you to come to their school, they make it happen. But I
Yeah.
had to take a bus from Southeast DC to McKinley every morning. I had to get up, hit the bus at 7. It was about an hour, commute depending on traffic and all that stuff, and then do the same thing back home. And so it was a learning time for me because it taught me one to be on my own and to be responsible. I was kind of a mama's boy, which is why I ended up at Georgetown anyway. My mom and my sisters pretty much raised me all through my formative years. My older sister had already gone out on their own, and so it's basically my mom and my 3 sisters, and they needed me as much as I needed them. It's a funny thing in that neighborhood where at that time it was considered Dodge City, Washington D.C. Live,
Mhm.
and shooting, crack epidemic. Uh, but when you're an athlete, people tend to leave you and yours alone. You kind of represent the hood. They pull
Yeah.
for you, and so in that way, I was able to keep my family safe
Yeah.
in that area. And you know, I eventually all met, all American. I had over 300 offers coming out of high school. We were in an area where there were a lot of really good players. I mean, at Dunbar in DC, you had Anthony Jones, who also ended up coming to Georgetown. Anthony was top 5 in the country. He played with Sylvester Charles, who was fantastic. Uh, you had, Spingarn with Earl Jones. Earl Jones at that time we thought was the most talented big man we had ever seen. We had never seen a guy 6'10", 6'11" with ball handling skills that could shoot and just pretty much do anything on a basketball court. So it was competitive. It was competitive. And then you had the Catholic schools. You had Adrian Branch out at Maryland. He was at the MAPA at the time. Johnny Dawkins and
Yeah.
Dominic Presley were at Mackin. And I mean, I could go down a long list of great players. And so, it was competitive. We'd meet sometimes up at AU. That's where I first played against Lynn Bias, who was a different type of athlete. I mean, the guy, although we were about the same size, the guy was just, a freak of nature athlete. Um, and it's sad we didn't get to see more of Lenny, but Lenny was amazing. And but there was a ton of guys. Anyway, Gene Smith was the captain at Georgetown. Gene was my idol. Gene at that time. No offense, Gene, had no offense.
Yeah.
Gene was so fast. He was just amazing defensively. He's the only guy I've ever played with who can go in a game because it seems like he was always coming off the bench. And when he came out, get a standing ovation without scoring 1 point. I mean, he would literally dominate games defensively.
Yeah.
He would get a steal, and we had this thing in high school. He would pick somebody's pocket, and see when Gene gets a steal, you're not going to catch him. Okay, when he takes off before you, you're not going to catch him. So I got in the habit of trailing him because a lot of times he would actually be going too fast to make the layup. And so he'd bounce it off the rim and I'd get a slam dunk and everybody cheer and stuff. And, he made me look good.
Yeah.
And one of the most unselfish guys I've ever played with. didn't care about scoring, just wanted to win. And my junior year, his senior year, was easily my best year. He fed me so many balls, just made me look good.
Yeah.
That was my guy. That was my guy.
And so you talked a little bit about your recruiting. You end up at Georgetown. John Thompson. He was a name already, being from there as a player, playing with the Boston Celtics. Come back, he plays at St. Anthony's, and then Georgetown. Seeing Thompson, he said when he got hired, in later interviews, he said there will be a national championship banner up on that rafter. I guarantee you that at Georgetown. So he came with certain guarantees. So you end up going to the hilltop. I'll pass it along to Jerry because I know Jerry is the Georgetown fan. He's got the marks on his face for it when he got beat up wearing his Georgetown jacket. So,
It was all those all those Carolina fans I grew up with. But Billy, listen again. Welcome to the program. Thanks for joining us. We had Gene on, as you know. I did. Gene and I, we sat one-on-one. We did, I think, about close to an hour. We could have probably did about 3 hours. And I think he would agree with you that he did have no offense, by the way. So I don't think you have to worry about him getting insulted. But so now you get, like you said, you had how many Division I offers? You said over.
I could be exaggerating, but hundreds. I'll just say hundreds.
Now, what was the thing about Coach Thompson that said, you know what, I want to go to Georgetown. I want to play for Coach Thompson?
Well, it was my mom. Again, a lot of people thought that I was headed out to Maryland University. Their people were always at the games. And Maryland was the premier program at that time in that area. But it so happens that my mom got to talk to both the coaches, and my mom asked them the same question. She asked Coach Giselle, so Junior's not the sharpest tool in the shed. What are you going to do to help him graduate? And I can't remember Coach's exact words, but he was saying how they always take care of their athletes, and they do just fine, and they'll keep a little change in his pocket, and we're going to take good care of him. And my mom said, okay. And then she asked, the Georgetown people the same question, because I don't know that it was Coach Thompson or if it was Bill Stein, because Bill Stein was my guy. And he rattled off statistics like, we've graduated 98% of our athletes. We're the first program with an academic coordinator to help coordinate assignments. And, if he comes to Georgetown, we'll do everything we possibly can to help him graduate. But then he prefaced it. He said, now, Miss Martin, sometimes when you're trying to train young men to become men, it doesn't always feel good. So there may be some times when your son comes home and has some not so nice things to say about me. And they left. And my mom looked at me and went, guess we know where you're going to school. That was it. And it was a no-brainer because the year before I went to Georgetown, Gene went to Georgetown, and I followed his freshman year. And Gene was very honest when he said the coach told him, son, you're not going to play. You're not going to play. We recruited Fred Brown. And I don't know if you guys saw Fred Brown his freshman and sophomore year, but Fred was a 6'5" point guard with amazing ball handling skills, passing skills, physical, tough defensively. It was his job. But Gene just worked his tail off. Anytime he came into the game, you could see the complexion of the game change. He just worked and worked and worked. And at the end of his freshman year, he was starting. And anytime you saw these guys, they were in suit and tie. They were always very articulate. You never heard about anybody getting into trouble or any kind of shenanigans. John went out of his way to shield us from all the hoopla surrounding us once we got to campus, because right from the start, obviously, when you signed Patrick Ewing, there's a lot of hoopla that comes with it.
Mhm.
But it was my mom. It was the fact that Gene went there the year before, which helped, which I thought would help me integrate better because at least someone knew me and somebody that I could go to if I had questions and stuff like that. So Gene was my guy, and I really did want because I wanted to graduate. I wanted to get a degree, and that's what my mom wanted me to do because not a lot of people thought I would be able to do that at Georgetown. I just barely skated through high school and, barely kept my 2.0 average, and some of the teachers may have graded me on a curve, because I was Big Doom, the man. And, but, probably the hardest thing I had to do at Georgetown was, get my degree because they did everything. I mean, I had tutors. I would call the academic coordinator every night. We'd go over my assignments. It was tough because the other students at the school, these were all dean's list students. I mean, these kids were so smart. I mean, they were so smart, but people did great on the curve, and I just hung in there, and managed to get my degree in 4 years. This is my crowning achievement. One of the proudest things I've done all my life.
Well, it's fun. It's funny that you went down that road, Billy, because again, like Jimmy told you, I was a big Georgetown guy, growing up. It wasn't, I grew up in an urban area. It wasn't a norm, let's call it what it is in my neighborhood. It wasn't a norm for a young white male to be a Georgetown fan, to have a Georgetown starter jacket. But what you just said, there's certain things I think when you're young, you're impressionable, you're getting into sports, and with Coach Thompson, I read books and everything, but even as a young kid, it always seemed to me, and I know it sounds like trivial, but even as a young kid, it always seemed to me that yes, every coach is going to say, "Oh, I care for my players." But I think even as a fan and as a young fan, you felt that rooting for Georgetown, that here's a man, leading young men, and he truly cared for his players. And I think at that time, you're mentioning terms like academic coordinators, tutors. Nobody did that in college athletics in the early. Nobody did that in the.
They were the
He was
first
such
ever.
a trendsetter, and it was really awesome, really to root for you guys. And really, I mean, Georgetown to me, like when we were speaking on the phone, the whole Hoya paranoia, but Georgetown to me was a phenomenon during those times. It really was. I mean, they captivated, cultivated, college basketball, and that started with the coach, who set the tone. But you just, and I think that's what, me coming into my fandom for college basketball, at that time, that's what, drew me to Georgetown. And let's call it what it is. I think there was a lot of people that were attracted to Georgetown because they were saying a lot of things that were never said before. Maybe people didn't have the guts to say before. And that's what I think why certain people were attracted, to the program and to what Coach Thompson was trying to do. And he did. I mean, now I look at it and I really respect him for, setting up those boundaries, if you will, keeping you guys insulated for the right reasons. And, it was a great story. And like you said, you went there, and you became more than a basketball player. I mean, it shaped your life, walking out of there with a college degree at a time when people, weren't doing that.
No, it was unique. The program was unique in that sense. But Coach Thompson is a DC guy. We used to meet at one of the boys' clubs. I think it was number 10 on Rhode Island Avenue, and all the best players in there. They did Saturday morning. That's where all the best players would meet. And it was tough to get on the floor. And Coach would be there. He'd sit over in the corner, and you didn't go over to him, but every now and then he would call somebody over, say a few words, send them back out there. But he didn't do any kind of recruiting or anything. He just wanted to see the best players in the area, and that's where he excelled. The year they went to the Final Eight, it was 2 years before we got there in '79. Well, other than Sleepy Floyd, the next two best players, John Doran and Craig Shelton, were both from Dunbar, DC. And, both of them went to the NBA. They were fantastic. Doran was, the first guy at Georgetown to be drafted in the first round. Obviously, Sleepy went on to, have a great career and do his thing. And he was fantastic. But they stayed with that because even after we left, there were still more Georgetown players to come. Anthony Tucker, I forget the little guard's name, Victor something or other. So it's been a long list of guys out of that area to follow Coach Thompson. He just commanded a certain amount of respect and was unique as an individual at that time that as a young man, you wanted to be a part of that. Yeah.
And then I guess your freshman year, you come in with Patrick Ewing, and it kind of, I guess, probably took a lot of the pressure off you because you came in with the notoriety, but then, Patrick, just knowing him from 5-star, but then you guys end up making to the NCAA tournament and, playing against Worthy, Jordan, and then back with his first championship. But I don't want to go into the details of how it ended, but what did Coach say to you afterwards, going in that locker room in that 82 championship game? Because it's a different time. Dean Smith, they squeezed the ball, and they played at 4 corners. So, first of all, let's say, going into the game where you obviously you were prepared, but what did he say before the game and after how it ended? So.
Well, I don't remember Coach's exact words, but we had just knocked off a team with 8 or 9 first-round draft picks. Let me say the names. You had the McRae brothers, Jerry Eves, Derek Smith, Lancaster Gordon. Coming off the bench, you had Billy Thompson, Milton Wagner. They were loaded.
Yeah.
Absolutely loaded. And we battled and we won. And I remember Coach telling us, you guys have earned the right to be here. Just go out and do what you do, and we should be fine. And we should be fine. Now, he did have some special instructions for Patrick.
Yeah.
Because James Worthy was the best player in the country that year. He had a fine game. He torched us. Perkins was terrific. Doherty was terrific. But he told Patrick, let him know you're out there, son, right from the start of the game. Just let him know you're out there. And I don't know if you guys remember, but they were shooting the ball and Pat would jump up and grab it out of the air. He gave him like the first 6 or 8 points.
Right.
Just so that he could serve notice that he was there. And, and we battled. We went toe to toe and we were in a position to win. It's unfortunate what happened at the end, but, when Michael Jordan took that 22-footer to put them up by 1, there was nobody in the stadium expecting him to take that shot. We had gone up by 1. They had 22 seconds left. We figured they'd run the clock down, get the ball to Worthy or Perkins inside. They swung it around to Michael, and he jacked the 22-footer and hit nothing but net. But you could see the coach going, no. Okay. And then when he made it, but and then he left 14 seconds on the clock. He left 14 seconds. We got the best shooter in the country. We got the best big man down low. It was ours to win. And then the unfortunate happened.
Yeah.
And but after the game, I just remember how he loved up on Fred because for a young man to be in that situation and have that happen, all of a sudden the game's not that important. The kid is. And he gave him a huge hug. In fact, I remember 2 years later when we won it, one of the first people he grabbed was Fred Brown.
Yeah, and that was a legendary hug too. It goes down.
Yeah.
You still see that hug, on the pregame.
Yeah.
And that was a telltale moment for Georgetown winning that hug. Kind of washed away all all the bad stuff, and that
Yeah,
it finally
because
made it.
we you know, like you said, the expectations for us from day one were very high. And then by getting to the finals, uh, you know, they're like, yeah, that we'll be back. We'll be back. I mean, that was always our mantra. We, you know, we were always focused on getting back there. Well, we had a subpar year our next year. And you know, I got some of the articles over here. People were just cutting us to shreds. And but you know, the next year John got back and you know, on the recruiting trail and reloaded.
Mm.
He reloaded and you know, got a couple of guys from Baltimore. I mean, we got David Wingate and Mike Jackson the year before, and then Reggie came our junior year, and Michael Graham, and just a host of other guys. You know, Horace Broadnax, and all of a sudden, you know, we were 2 or 3 deep at every position, which meant, you know, if I went out there and I got 5 fouls, it didn't matter because there's somebody else to come in and replace me. So we had no reservations about going all out every minute, because if we didn't, you're gonna look over to the table and somebody's coming in hungry to play. That's
Yeah.
gonna go out all out every minute and replace you. So we you know, we were motivated. We were motivated.
Now, getting back to you individually, you know, like you said, you come out of high school, you know, you're a, you know, top recruit, you know, multiple offers. What was it like mentally? Because I think your sophomore year, right? You started coming off the bench,
It's
right?
my
Was it
junior year. It's my
junior year? Okay, I'm sorry. So
Yeah.
your junior year, you're coming off the bench. People are flipping out, you know, that you're coming off the bench. But yet, if I'm correct in my numbers here, you average 27, 30 minutes a game coming off the bench, and were making a very, very big difference coming off the bench. But what, you know, and again, back then there was no such term. I think, if I'm correct, right? I'm thinking back now. You were the first person that I remember, kind of, especially in college, ever being having the term like 6 man thrown around, because nobody really used that term, 6 man, right? And you were like really the first like true 6 man off the bench, right? He wanted, if I remember correctly, right, he wanted to get Reggie some time as a freshman, right? And that was the philosophy, that you came off the bench, you could adapt to that role and still make a impact on the game. Is that the reason why that took place, or no?
No, no,
Okay.
no. I tell you why it took place. Early in the year, we were playing at DePaul, and you know, John has certain rules that, you know, you don't break his rules. And it was just by coincidence, like we would stay, you know, away from wherever we're playing, and then we were not supposed. In fact, we didn't even know where we were going to stay most of the time until we got there. But we got there, and my older sister was there, and so he assumed that, you know, I had told her where we were staying, and that's against the rules. And after that game, he told me I wouldn't start for the rest of the year.
Wow.
But the reality is, I knew it was coming. I knew it was coming because, you know, the way the season ended the year before. You know, I was a 6'7" power forward, about 200 pounds. We played against Memphis. They had Keith Lee, who was an All-American, and then they had another 6'10" guy and a guy named Bobby Parks. They were terrific. And the little General Andre at the point guard, and it became very obvious that we needed a bigger power forward. Yeah, I mean, it was glaring. And see, at that time, DePaul had Embry and Comegys. And Comegys was, you know, 6'9", 6'10". And defensively, I struggled. If it was a skilled 4-man with that kind of size, I struggled. And then at that time, everybody was going big. Everybody was going big. You know, you look at St. John's with Winnington and Barry and Willie Glass, or Kentucky with the Twin Towers of Turpin and Bowie, and then a 6'9" Skywalking, you know, 3-man. Houston with, Elijah and Cadillac Anderson and Mishaw. And I mean, everybody had two bigs. And so that was his goal. I mean, at the end of our sophomore year, in that game against Memphis, he emptied the bench at my position, trying to find someone who could guard their four-man. And so he knew that was a weakness that we needed to address. And the next year he brought in Michael Graham, Clifton Darisaw, Ronnie Highsmith, about 4 power forwards.
Was Ralph Dalton on that
Yes.
team?
Yes. Now the story with Ralph is simply, Ralph was going to be the power forward at Georgetown. The first game of our freshman season, he had the most horrific injury I've ever seen in basketball, where he planted and turned, but his foot didn't. And it took him 2 years of rehab. He had to wear a special shoe just so he could get up and down the court. And he came back. He came back. And Ralph didn't have the mobility that he had before his injury. He was still effective. And he saved our butts quite a few times. In fact, when I run to the finals against Georgia Tech, when Pat was in foul trouble, Ralph stepped up. Ralph stepped up and did his thing. So Coach was looking for someone to fill that role. From the beginning, I was supposed to develop into a small forward. It just so happens that, I was most effective at the 4 position because, in most games I'd have some kind of advantage. If I was quicker or more athletic, I was a great rebounder. I could score inside. I could score off the break. But I wasn't the guy you was going to post up and throw it into me and expect me to make a move and go over somebody 6'10". We needed someone bigger and stronger. And that really was the reason. Now, my junior year, I didn't start any games, but I would say more than half of them, the second half, I was in the starting 5. And John that year taught me something about myself that I didn't even recognize or aware of. But he called me over one time. He didn't think I was playing, with enough aggression or hard enough. And he said, "Come here, son. I want to talk to you for a minute. You know what your problem is, son? You've been homogenized." And he asked me if I knew what that meant. I'm like, I don't know. It's something on the milk, right? I mean, it's something to do with milk. And so he told me to go look it up, and I looked at it. And basically, what he was trying to tell me is that I was playing soft. That, if I was playing that way back in my old neighborhood, I'd get my back broken. And that kind of made me angry. And I was taken out of the starting lineup. So every time I got a chance to play, every practice, I went balls out. I didn't care if it was 5 minutes, 1 minute, I went balls out. And in my opinion, it was my most productive year in terms of production per minute. Because I wasn't going to play, 30 or 35 minutes. Some days it would be 17, other days it'd be 25, sometimes 30. But whatever time I got, I was going to do whatever I could to help our team win. And when it came down to the Final Four, it was simple. But all the teams had 2 bigs. Houston was too big. I couldn't take. I couldn't guard Cadillac Anderson. Cadillac Anderson was 6'9", 6'10" with long arms. Akeem, 7 foot with unbelievable athletic ability. They had all these guys. Benny Anderson come off the bench, 6'8", 6'9" at the 3. They were huge. So we needed size. Reggie helped that, but Michael was the key at the 4 position because Michael was a freshman. They had no tape on Michael. They didn't know him from Adam. They had lots of tape on me, on Patrick. They didn't have any tape on Reggie. They didn't know what Reggie could do. Reggie caught him by surprise, and so did Michael. And they were the key to us winning. But it was the size. It was the size that we needed in order to do that. And Coach was absolutely right.
No, that's a great story because again, it's not easy to do. I mean, coming off the bench. I mean, mentally there's a big component of that you have to overcome. I mean, as you know, I mean, it's not easy. Not everybody can come off the bench.
Well, no. So, there's a stigma attached to it. And I had to, battle that storm in the media, being demoted and, taken out of the lineup and blah, blah, blah. But none of that stuff mattered to me. I was so proud of being a part of that program and, so close to the guys. I mean, we were together all the time, all the time. If we went out as a team, the academic coordinator, the coach, we'd go to the movies together, we'd go to the dinner together. We'd have study rooms set up on the road, we get together. I mean, we were together all the time. Those were my guys. And I loved it. I did. I felt like, being a part of something like that made me feel special. It gave me a sense of confidence and that we were doing something good. And so, yeah, it didn't faze me. My answer was, you know what? I'm just going to have to work a little bit harder.
Yeah. Well, I think that's also the testament to the genius of John Thompson, too, because he just knew that you weren't playing at the level. And I guess he was, like Jerry said, he kind of alluded to his cutting edge things, but he was a psychologist, sports psychologist before there was a term. And just the word saying homogenized knew that it was going to start something in you that he needed for the team. And it's just like you hear so many stories about it. I read his biography. It just like you really like just the word homogenized has got you going.
Yeah. Well, and you're absolutely right because it wasn't just me. He knew what buttons to push to get a little bit more out of people, not just the athletes, but the people, his coaches, everybody that dealt with John. He knew what he had to do to get a little bit more out of them. It was one of his gifts.
I mean, again, like, we talked about this, back then, like, you were a part of an amazing program, you're coming off the bench, back then, I think it had to be harder to overcome, like you said, that stigma, because back then there was no, nobody used the term like, 8-man rotation or 9-man rotation. It was like they have subs come on to spell the starters and the starters go back out. Like now, as you know, basketball is totally different. You have a 10-man rotation, it becomes an 8-man rotation, in the postseason, there's defined roles. This guy comes off the bench. We need him, backup point guard. They really didn't throw terms around like that, in the early 1980s. It was like, these are the 5 starters. And, so that's a testament to you, testament to your upbringing. And obviously it's a testament, to Coach Thompson. But, as we're getting into this interview, I just want to say this is going much better than when we had Gene on. But I'm gonna, because I know he's listening, so I got to take a little dig to see, make sure he's really paying attention to us.
But what they used to say about us is that we would come in waves. You look up at the desk. Somebody come out 6'7" with long and gangly and defensive minded. And they'd go out and somebody else would come in. We had about an 8 or 9-man rotation the year that we won it. We were deep. Right. It could have gone deeper.
Well, even with that though, I mean, if you look nowadays, somebody in your position, being a starter and then coming off the bench, they probably would transfer.
So today?
Yeah. But like I think that's what's getting missed in today's game is that the resiliency.
You would have been on your 4th school by now.
Yeah.
In 2025, right? I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So I just think that it's a testament to the story. I know, like Izzo said that about Draymond Green. He goes, he wasn't really the player I had, but like saying that your thing. If you're a starter, sophomore, you're coming off the bench junior year, I'm leaving. Somebody's going to show me love somewhere. Yeah. So I think just a testament just to kind of where you are in your life and how you kind of plowed through it. So,
today guys are looking at their pockets. If as a starter you're gonna earn more from NIL and all that stuff. than you will, coming off the bench. And I really think team success takes a back seat to financial success.
And in this interview, in the first 120 seconds, you talked about getting a degree, which nobody, let's call it what it is talking about today. Right? It's NIL, how much playing time, where am I, how much money I'm making, how long do I have to stay before the NBA? And that, that was another thing. Like you said, you were honored to be part of the program because back then, Georgetown, like other schools at the time, was a program. People stayed 4 years. Now it's just you don't have, unfortunately, there's not college programs, there's college teams. I mean, and again, certain people are using it to their advantage. I mean, those are the rules. Like, look what Rick Pitino's done with St. John's. Look what Bill Belichick is doing with North Carolina football. I mean, the transfer portal is becoming like, free agency. It is what it is.
It's a brave new world.
It is.
And I don't know how these coaches navigate it because, and you'll see this in a tournament because it's a fact. Teams that stay together for a year or 2 years, they develop a continuity and a sense of how to play together with each other. And you'll see it all the time in the tournament where you got this team with all this talent and this wonderful talents, overwhelming favorites, but the other team that's playing well, playing together wins.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I don't know in today's landscape. Calipari, when he was at Kentucky, was able to mold his guys into a team by the end of the year. I mean, he'd have all these one and dones. And I would imagine there are other coaches that are doing the same thing, but that's got to be hard, man.
Yeah.
To bring guys from different programs, different styles of play, other areas of the country, and get them to play as a cohesive unit. You just don't have enough time to develop any kind of continuity with your teammates. But then you know what? I had Coach Cooley say something to me the other day. He was like, Bill, you remember when you used to play pickup? You ain't know the guys on your team. You just went out there and played and, and just develop a chemistry. So I guess that's what's happening.
That makes sense too. That makes sense too.
Yeah. And that's how I guess if you, like what Coach Cooley said, if you look at it like that, that's the way you manage it, and you go forward with it. It's,
because you can't.
Time is not on your side.
No,
time is definitely not on your side. Coach Cal, like you mentioned him, he has that pretty much mastered. The whole one and done. Like you said, his teams from the beginning of the season to tournament time are night and day, and which is why he's been as successful as he has.
Yeah.
But
he might have been one of the first, at least one of the first to show it can be done. That you can have a group of kids come together within one season, and I still like it better the other way, where you could see guys develop and get better, and but I'm old school.
Well, he did it with. We talked about it when we were just prepping for the interview. He did it with your son's teammate. Your son played for St. Pat's and Elizabeth. I saw him play. Chris. He played with Gilchrist. And that was, I think, his Calipari did it with those two. But
he did. He did. Yeah.
Just
Gilchrist.
Just turning back to you again. So we'll kind of glance over the '85 game because we all know about that. So, but I don't know if Jerry wants to get into it. But
we're not allowed. Jimmy knows we're not allowed to talk about that.
No,
it's okay.
After college, you end up getting drafted, and then you kind of, So what was it like your post Georgetown career, and also what was it like you personally not having that safety net of Georgetown basketball, Coach Thompson, and your teammates? You're kind of on the world by yourself now.
In all honesty, I didn't function well in the NBA environment because I did feel like I was on my own, and for whatever reason, mostly because I'd look around and I didn't have the kind of skills, and I knew it, to elevate me to the level that I needed to be at based on my size. Now, in today's game, I'm much more suited for today. I would have been much more suited for today's game, where you got 6, 7 guys running around at the 4, the 3. Some of them even playing center. Draymond, 6'7", 6'8", plays center. I mean, there's a long list of them. And I had a similar game to a lot of those guys you see that play multiple positions at 6'7". And now there are no position. It's positionless basketball.
Yeah.
And but the biggest thing is when I left Georgetown after '85, I went to the Pacers, and I was the 26th pick. Well, the 27th pick was Dwayne McClain from Villanova, and my battery's going low.
All right.
And I'll get my IT department in here in a second. My wife.
That's good.
Dwayne McClain went number 27. And so we're rookies together in Indiana. The championship happened on April Fool's Day. Every day I come into the locker room, here's Dwayne on the other side of the room. Hey, Bill, April Fool's. Great. Thanks, D. D was one of my closest buddies. We've been friends ever since. That hatchet was buried right then and there because, you're talking about, really, really classy guys, all of them, Dwayne, Presley, Everson. I mean, just class, just class. And, but our senior year in '85, we had played together for several years. We had climbed that mountain. It was going to be my third trip. And we lost a couple of games early. We were ranked number 1, and St. John's came in and handed it to us. Syracuse handed it to us, and things got real serious in practice. Things got real serious, and we didn't lose the rest of the game. We didn't lose again until we lost in that final. And anybody will tell you, when you get to that last game, the last person you want to see is someone from your conference who's familiar with you. Coach Massimino and John have been playing with each other. They know each other's schemes. They can pretty much predict what each other was going to do. And they not only did they have a great game plan against us, but they executed it to perfection. And you see that sometimes in the tournament. You saw it a few years early with North Carolina State versus Houston. I gave North Carolina State no chance in that game. Houston was so talented. I mean, just at every position they were deep. And but again, it's a team game, and it's usually the best team that wins. And then they played better. They deserve to win.
Yeah. Well, even when Chris Mullen was a head coach at St. John's, he's like, I still got to go against Patrick Ewing in coaching. So it's just like when he was a coach at Georgetown, so they just couldn't get away with each other. But
Exactly.
But anyway, I know we're going to wrap it up, Bill. I don't. I'll give it up to Jerry. You want to finish it out, and we'll close this out. But Bill, I can't thank enough for your time. And this has been great. Going down, and I can't thank Gene enough just for setting it up. So Jerry, why don't you close
Billy,
it out?
Thanks for joining us. Thanks for taking time out of your schedule. Again. We're trying. Jimmy and I are trying to expand. We've been lucky. We had you. We had Gene. I think, unfortunately, in the next week, I actually have to talk to Willie Glass. So I have to give crap about being a Johnny. Yeah. But I mean, again, you guys, for me, you and Gene represent a big part of my childhood, and then more importantly, to our viewers and listeners, Jimmy will attest to this. You guys really represented a time where the Big East, was the only conference as far as we're concerned, in college basketball. And it's nice to see this year, more interest getting generated, back to the Big East, which hopefully will be, a sign of things to come. But again, you had a great career. You were a great Hoya. Like you said, you went to the dance 3 times, national champion, college graduate. And like I said, a much better guest than my man Gene Smith. But, again, thanks for coming on. It means a lot to us. We'll definitely stay in touch, and I could talk to ex-Georgetown players all day.
Yeah. Well, Jim, Jerry, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. it's one of my favorite things to do is to reminisce and just tell stories. And I could go on longer. So if you have an extra hour, just give me a call.
Sounds good.
Well,
Thanks
listen,
again, Billy.
we may hold you to that, but I know I guess you're still in contact with Ed Cooley, so I guess it looks like the program's back. I don't know if they're gonna make the tournament this year, but he looks like he's got them trending in the right direction.
Kicking in the right direction.
So
I see some intensity on defense that I hadn't seen in previous years since since they went to the Final Four the last time with JT3.
Yeah.
But yeah, they look good. But again, what is that going to mean next year with all new players?
Right.
Yeah, that's true. It's pickup basketball, I guess. That's
Yeah. Guys, enjoy your Saturday. Thank you for having me.
Take care.
Thanks, Bill.
Okay, take care.
Have a great weekend, everybody. This is
Jerry
out with special guest Billy Morin.